20 years ago, I bought myself the ultimate luxury, uninterrupted peace. I cut the cords, I locked the gate, and for a while, I truly believed I had found paradise. No pointless small talk draining my energy, no calendar full of obligations I was secretly dreading, no noise from the neighbors, no compromises, just stillness. The sun would rise, and I was the only one there to see it. The coffee tasted better because I drank it in absolute silence. My thoughts were finally my own, clear, sharp, no longer drowned out by the static of other people's opinions. I read books from cover to cover without interruption. I worked on my own projects on my own time. I didn't answer to anyone. It was a kingdom of one, and I was its benevolent and very, very happy king. I remember standing by my window one evening. I was watching the cars rush by on the highway in the distance, and I thought, this is it. This is freedom. The world, with all its frantic, messy energy, can just spin on without me. I had successfully stepped off the ride. But I'm here to tell you something different. The cost of that peace was a silence so profound it eventually consumed the very man who bought it. I didn't just buy peace. I bought a slow, invisible erasure of my own soul. You don't notice the shift at first. It isn't some big, dramatic event. It's more like a change in the weather of your own mind. It's so gradual, you don't realize you're freezing until your bones are already aching from the cold. For me, the first sign was sound, or rather, the terrifying absence of it. Suddenly, the gentle hum of the refrigerator became a roar. The creak of a single floorboard wasn't just a noise, it was an event. I started noticing the sound of my own breathing, that rhythmic, lonely cadence of a single body existing in a space built for more. The silence I had craved, the thing that made my solitude feel so peaceful, it started to feel different. It wasn't the quiet of a library anymore, filled with potential and wisdom. It became the silence of a forgotten tomb, heavy, final, thick enough to choke on. You see, solitude is a choice. It is a deliberate act of spending time with yourself to recharge. But loneliness is what happens when you run out of yourself to spend time with. I remember one winter, about 5 years in, I caught a nasty flu. I was in bed for 3 days, feverish, shaking and aching in every joint. And the thought that kept circling my delirious mind wasn't about my health. It wasn't about dying. It was the realization that if I were to just stop breathing right there in that bed, nobody would know. Not for days, maybe weeks. Who would even notice I was gone? The mail would pile up, and that's it. That was the only system marking my existence. The automated bills would get paid, the lights would stay on, but the life inside the house would have vanished. The thought didn't scare me as much as it hollowed me out. That peace I'd bought suddenly felt dangerous. It felt like I was already a ghost. Then things got weirder. The mind, when starved of input, starts to eat itself. I started talking to myself. And I don't just mean muttering where I put my keys. I mean full-on conversations. I'd ask myself a question, and then, in a slightly different tone, I'd answer it. It became a habit, born of pure, desperate necessity. I was starving for the sound of a human voice, even if it was just a distorted echo of my own. I missed arguing. I missed debating. I missed the simple, friction-filled back and forth of a casual chat. I realized I hadn't heard myself laugh in years. I tried it once, just to see if I still could. The sound that came out was alien, a rusty, unused thing. It sounded like a stranger was in the room with me, and that terrified me more than the silence. Here's the brutal truth of what I paid for my peace. The price wasn't just loneliness. The price was my identity. You think you know who you are, right? You've got your principles, your tastes, your memories. You think of yourself as this solid rock that lives inside you, but it isn't. Your identity isn't forged in a vacuum. It's co-created. It's the sum of 1,000 tiny, daily interactions. It's your friend rolling their eyes at your bad joke. It's your partner knowing what you're going to order before you do. We're defined, in large part, by our reflection in the eyes of others. When there are no eyes to see you and no ears to hear you, that reflection starts to fade. Who are you if no one is there to witness you? My memories started losing their color. A vivid recollection of a trip with friends would pop into my head, but it felt like watching a movie of someone else's life. Without someone to say, "Hey, remember when?" the memories became unanchored. They floated away like smoke. I'd look in the mirror and a stranger would look back. Not because of age, but because the man in the reflection had no context. He wasn't a son or a friend or a colleague. He was just a biological entity, alone in a room. When you're stripped of all social context, you become a ghost in your own life. The silence I'd bought became a void, and that void started pulling me into it. My personality began to erode. My opinions turned to mush because there was no one to test them against. The cruel irony? The longer you're isolated, the rustier the social skills you need to escape it become. I imagined a noble, contemplative life, like some philosopher on a mountaintop. The reality was just pathetic. I was a man who had forgotten how to be a person. I built a sanctuary, but I locked the door from the outside and threw away the key. The peace I had was the peace of being completely and utterly irrelevant.
The price of 20 years of uninterrupted peace was my own humanity. Turns out the saying, "we are social creatures," isn't just a poetic sentiment. It's a biological fact. It is written into our DNA. Our brains are literally wired for connection. We need it like we need air and water. Research even shows that loneliness acts like a state of chronic stress, raising cortisol, destroying sleep, shrinking the brain. I thought I was buying tranquility, but I was actually signing up for a low-grade, 20-year state of low emergency. My body knew I was in danger, even if my mind called it freedom. I'd made the classic, arrogant mistake. I thought that all the noise and mess of other people was the problem. I figured if I just removed them from the equation, I'd be left with the pure, essential part of myself. But I was dead wrong. The messy parts are the essential part. The clumsy conversations, the misunderstandings, the shared laughter, the small kindnesses, the arguments, the forgiveness. That's not the noise you have to filter out to get to the good stuff. That is the good stuff. That's the symphony. I'd walked out of the concert hall because the trombones were a little too loud, and I spent the next 20 years sitting in a soundproof room, wondering why I couldn't hear the music anymore. True peace, I'm starting to think, isn't the absence of noise. It is found in the connections you choose to build. It's the quiet understanding with a loved one. It's the feeling of belonging somewhere. It's the inner calm that comes from knowing you're not totally alone in this vast, cold universe. The peace I had was just an absence, an emptiness, a blank page. And a blank page is a terrible legacy. I traded the vibrant, chaotic story of a human life for the sterile silence of an empty room. It was the worst deal I ever made.
My journey back has been slow and awkward. Learning to talk to people again feels like learning a language I used to be fluent in, but haven't spoken in decades. I stumble over words, I get tired easily, I struggle with the regret, with the feeling of all those wasted years that I can never get back. But I'm trying to focus on the fact that I finally understand the lesson, no matter how late it came. Solitude is a vital part of a healthy life. Don't get me wrong. It's a time to recharge and reflect. It's a harbor, not the open ocean. It's a place to visit, not a place to live. We are not meant to be islands. So I'll leave you with this question, one I now have to ask myself every single morning when I wake up in this quiet house. At what point does the sanctuary we build for ourselves become the prison that holds us captive? I would genuinely love to hear your thoughts on this. What's your relationship with solitude? Do you crave it, or do you fear it? Share your perspective in the comments. Maybe, by sharing, we can all make this space feel a little less silent.